The epic life of Leif Ericson, a Viking explorer beyond the edge of the world. Leif Ericson's incredible story is a saga of daring exploration, cultural transformation, and historical significance. Raised amidst the rugged beauty of Iceland and Greenland, he symbolizes the indomitable spirit of the Viking Age. His name resounds through centuries as the first European to step onto the shores of North America, opening new horizons and etching his legacy into the annals of history. The story of Leif Ericson, born around 970 CE amidst Iceland's stark yet breathtaking landscapes, begins in a world shaped by both beauty and strife. As the son of Eric the Red, a fiery explorer who was twice exiled for his defiant nature, and Thjodhild, a steady woman of faith, Leif grew up amidst the duality of ambition and resilience. This balance would shape his remarkable character. Iceland in the 10th century was a crucible of culture. Viking seafaring prowess and oral storytelling blended into a rich tapestry of sagas that preserved the glories of their gods, heroes, and uncharted destinations. Imagine the young Leif sitting by the fire, wide-eyed as he listened to tales of Thor's might and the bravery of explorers who sailed into the unknown. These stories, more than mere entertainment, were seeds of inspiration, fueling his desire to etch his own narrative into the scrolls of history. When Eric the Red was banished yet again and sailed westward to the icy frontiers of Greenland, Leif followed with his siblings Thorvald, Thorstein and Freydis. This land, hostile and unyielding, honed Leif's resourcefulness and reignited his dream to journey even further into the unexplored. By the late 990s, Leif Ericson entered the threshold of adulthood, ready to carve his destiny. Restless for discovery and connection to his ancestors' roots, he sailed east to Norway. There, at King Olaf Tryggvason's court, he encountered a new way of life that would forever alter his worldview. King Olaf, a magnetic figure committed to spreading Christianity across the Norse realms, saw immense promise in life. Baptized into Christianity, Leif absorbed ideals that would guide his moral compass. But this spiritual awakening did not dull his adventurous spirit. It sharpened it. Charged by King Olaf to return to Greenland as a Christian emissary, Leif became a man on a dual mission: to lead his people toward faith and to seek the distant edges of the map. Leif Ericson's defining voyage was born from a twist of fate. The windswept tales of merchant Bjarni Herjolfsson, who had glimpsed unknown lands west of Greenland, danced in Leif's imagination. Determined to follow those whispers, he gathered 35 brave souls and ventured into uncharted waters around the year 1000 CE. Picture their journey: the creaking wood of longships battling stormy seas, the sharp tang of salty air, and the boundless horizon ahead. Their first landfall, a barren and rocky expanse, was named Helluland, or Land of Flat Stones, now believed to be Baffin Island. Leif's quest was defined not just by his bold navigation, but also by his adaptability, a trait sharpened by his upbringing in harsh terrains. Further south, the explorers reached Markland, or Land of Forests, likely Labrador, with its bountiful timber and wildlife. But the jewel of their discovery awaited: the fertile shores of Vinland. Mild in weather and abundant with wild grapes, Vinland likely corresponds to modern-day Newfoundland. Its richness stood in stark contrast to Greenland's icy barrenness. The crew's stay in Vinland was not without challenges. The sagas tell of encounters with indigenous peoples, whom they referred to as Skraelings. Though their presence in Vinland was ephemeral, it secured Leif's name as a pioneer connecting two worlds. Leif Ericson returned home as a celebrated explorer, his ships laden with timber and grapes, and his tales of Vinland igniting the imaginations of his people. His discovery marked Europe's first known contact with North America, an achievement nearly 5 centuries before Columbus would cross the Atlantic. In Greenland, Leif inherited his father's leadership mantle, becoming chieftain of Brattahlid. Yet leadership was more than governance for Leif. It was cultural transcendence. Honor-bound by his promise to King Olaf, he worked to introduce Christianity, beginning with his mother Thjodhild, who became Greenland's first convert. Yet this cultural evolution was anything but simple. Eric the Red, steadfast in his pagan beliefs, embodied the tug-of-war between faiths during this transformative period. For Viking enthusiasts, this juncture epitomizes the duality of the Viking Age, a time of relentless exploration and profound societal change. Leif's siblings shared his passion for adventure, attempting new expeditions to Vinland. However, these missions met varied outcomes, from temporary resource yields to tragic skirmishes, as in Thorvald's expedition. These journeys underscored the danger and fragility of early exploration, while also solidifying the Vikings' reputation as fearless navigators. In the twilight of his life, Leif Ericson remained an enigma. The sagas offer little detail about his later years, suggesting a peaceful existence as chieftain. However, the impact of his life reached far beyond his personal story. Leif's voyages symbolized a bridge between the old world and the new, a heroic feat revered through Norse oral tradition. Leif was more than just an explorer. He embodied the ethos of the Vikings, their hunger for conquest, their poetic perception of the world, and their ability to blend faith with ferocity. His Christian proselytizing mirrored the cultural transformation of his era, heralding the end of purely pagan traditions among Norse populations. For admirers of Viking heritage, Leif Ericson is an eternal figurehead of their rich history. With his adventurous heart and steadfast leadership, he contributed to redefining what it meant to be a Viking, explorer, builder, and bridge builder. Centuries passed, yet the legend of Leif Ericson refused to dim. Rediscovered during the Age of Exploration, his achievements garnered international acclaim. Today, statues of Leif grace public squares in places as far-reaching as Reykjavik and Seattle, honoring a man who ventured beyond the boundaries of his world. In 1964, the United States proclaimed October 9th as Leif Ericson Day, commemorating his contributions to history and recognizing the Scandinavian influence on the early Americas. The tangible proof of these stories lies in the archaeological findings at Lanceau Meadows in Newfoundland. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, this Norse settlement aligns with the sagas of Vinland, providing compelling evidence of Leif's historic voyage. The value of these findings goes beyond academic interest. They resonate deeply with Viking culture admirers. Each artifact unearthed breathes life into the sagas, offering modern Viking enthusiasts a vibrant link to their ancestral legacy. Leif Ericson remains an enduring symbol of curiosity, courage, and the unyielding human spirit. His life inspires us to cross into the unknown, whether across unmapped waters or through intellectual and creative explorations. For Viking culture enthusiasts, this is the enduring power of Leif's saga, an intoxicating blend of historical accounts, mythical bravery, and the eternal quest for discovery. In an era where the edges of the map were shrouded in mystery, Leif dared to step beyond those boundaries. His story is not just about geography, but the spirit of human potential, reminding us that no horizon is too distant, no adventure too grand. As we reflect on his journey today, Leif Ericson continues to light the way for dreamers, explorers, and those seeking to forge paths less taken. Like the young boy in Iceland enthralled by heroic tales around the fire, we all carry an ember of adventure. For Viking culture admirers, Leif Ericson is not just a figure of history. He is a guidepost and a tribute to the fearless pursuit of the unknown. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to explore this story with me. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any future videos where we dive into intriguing mysteries, untold histories, and the wonders of the unknown. 1. Discovery and early settlement, 9th century. Norse exploration. Iceland was first settled by Norse Vikings from Scandinavia, mainly from Norway. According to Landnámabók, the Book of Settlements, Ingólfur Arnason was the first permanent settler, arriving in 874 AD. He established his homestead where modern-day Reykjavik stands. Before the Norse, Irish monks called Papa are believed to have visited Iceland, though they left little impact. Landnám, settlement period 874–930. The settlement period saw an influx of Viking settlers who brought sheep, horses, cattle, and their cultural practices. They cleared forests for pasture and built turf houses. The Vikings were drawn by the uninhabited land's resources, particularly its rich fishing waters and grazing lands. 2. The founding of Althingi, 930 AD. Thingvellir. In 930, the settlers established the Althingi, a national assembly where chieftains met annually at Thingvellir, a natural amphitheater created by the rift between the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates. Laws were made, disputes settled, and punishments meted, including exile or execution. The Althingi was a legal body and a major social gathering. Law speaker. Iceland's laws were oral, memorized by the law speaker, Lögsugumadur, who recited a third of the laws each year during the Althingi's proceedings. 3. Conversion to Christianity, 1000 AD. Iceland's conversion to Christianity in the year 1000 was peaceful compared to other regions of Europe. The decision was made at the Althingi under the leadership of the law speaker, Þorgeir Ljósvetningagodi, who decided to adopt Christianity to prevent a split between pagan and Christian factions. The compromise allowed for the continued private practice of pagan rites, for a time, but the official religion became Christianity. This move helped Iceland maintain unity and avoid religious conflicts. 4. The Icelandic sagas and literary culture, 12th–14th century. Icelandic sagas. The sagas are a cornerstone of Iceland's cultural heritage. Written in the 12th to 14th centuries, they recount the lives and adventures of the early settlers, Viking voyages, feuds, and battles. Some of the most famous sagas include the Njál's saga, which tells of a deadly feud, and Egil's saga, which recounts the life of the warrior poet Egil Skallagrimsson. Eddas. Alongside the sagas, the prose Edda and poetic Edda are key medieval texts from Iceland, preserving much of what we know about Norse mythology. The prose Edda was written by Snorri Sturluson, an Icelandic historian, poet, and politician. 5. The Commonwealth era and foreign rule, 930–1262. Icelandic Commonwealth. For over 300 years, Iceland functioned as an independent commonwealth without a king or centralized government. However, power struggles between chieftains led to the decline of this system by the mid-13th century. Union with Norway, 1262. In 1262, Iceland entered a union with Norway, submitting to the Norwegian crown. This marked the end of the Icelandic Commonwealth. The union later extended to Denmark when the crowns of Norway and Denmark were united in the late 14th century. 6. Volcanic eruptions and natural disasters. Laki eruption, 1783–1784. One of the most catastrophic volcanic eruptions in history occurred in Iceland when the Laki fissure erupted. The eruption lasted 8 months and released massive amounts of ash and poisonous gases into the atmosphere. It caused a famine in Iceland, killing about 25% of the population. The eruption also had a global impact, with sulfuric aerosols leading to a dramatic drop in temperatures, crop failures, and widespread hunger in Europe. Katla and Hekla. Iceland's history is dotted with frequent volcanic eruptions from Hekla and Katla, two of the island's most active volcanoes. Hekla was once considered the entrance to hell in medieval European folklore due to its frequent and explosive eruptions. 7. Iceland's struggle for independence, 19th–20th century. National awakening. In the 19th century, inspired by the wave of nationalism sweeping Europe, Iceland began to push for greater autonomy. The rise of Icelandic literary societies, such as the Icelandic Literary Society in 1816, helped revive national identity through the preservation of language and literature. Home Rule, 1904. In 1904, Iceland gained home rule from Denmark, meaning it could govern its internal affairs while still under the Danish crown. The Act of Union in 1918 granted Iceland sovereignty, while Denmark continued to manage its foreign affairs. 8. World War II and full independence, 1944. Allied occupation. During World War II, Iceland was of strategic importance due to its location in the North Atlantic. After Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany in 1940, British forces occupied Iceland to prevent it from falling into German hands. The US later took over the occupation, building key infrastructure and airfields. Republic of Iceland, 1944. On June 17, 1944, while Denmark was still under Nazi occupation, Iceland declared itself a fully independent republic in a referendum. Svein Bjornsson became Iceland's first president. This day is now celebrated as Iceland's National Day, 9. Geothermal energy and environmental innovation. Harnessing nature. Iceland sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge, giving it access to abundant geothermal energy. The country began using geothermal energy in the early 20th century for heating homes and generating electricity. Today, almost 100% of Iceland's electricity comes from renewable sources, around 73% from hydropower and 27% from geothermal energy. Greenhouses and agriculture. Iceland uses geothermal energy to heat greenhouses, enabling the country to grow vegetables and fruits like tomatoes, cucumbers, and even bananas despite its northern climate. 10. Financial crisis and recovery, 2008-present. 2008 financial crisis. Iceland was hit hard by the global financial crisis of 2008. The three largest banks, which had taken on massive debts, collapsed. The Icelandic government allowed them to fail, and the country's currency, the krona, depreciated sharply. Unemployment spiked, but Iceland recovered more quickly than many expected, partially due to its ability to devalue its currency and attract tourists. Tourism boom. Iceland's tourism sector exploded after the Eyjafjallajökull eruption in 2010. Images of the volcanic eruption captivated global audiences, leading to a surge in visitors eager to explore the country's natural beauty: glaciers, waterfalls, geysers, and the northern lights. 11. Social progress and gender equality. First female president, 1980. Iceland was the first country in the world to democratically elect a female head of state, Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, who served from 1980 to 1996. Her election was a milestone in Iceland's long history of gender equality efforts. Gender pay gap. Legislation. Iceland has been a global leader in promoting gender equality. In 2018, it became the first country in the world to enforce equal pay laws, requiring companies to prove they pay men and women equally. 12. Unique fauna and flora. Icelandic horse. Icelandic horses are known for their resilience, having been bred in isolation for over a millennium. They possess a unique gait called the tolt, and no other horses are allowed to be imported into the country. Once an Icelandic horse leaves, it cannot return, ensuring the breed remains pure. Arctic fox. The only native land mammal is the Arctic fox, which survived the last ice age by crossing over from mainland Europe via sea ice. Iceland's journey from a remote Viking outpost to a modern, progressive nation is filled with resilience, adaptation, and an enduring connection to its natural environment. Its small population has managed to make significant global impacts in literature, social progress, and environmental innovation. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to explore this fascinating story with me. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any future videos where we dive even deeper into intriguing mysteries, untold histories, and the wonders of the unknown. The Serpent's Spine. The life and death of Ivar the Boneless. The air was thick with the scent of salt and smoke as the longships cut through the mist, their prows like dragon heads snarling against the icy waves. Among them sat a figure whose name would eclipse generations, capturing the imagination of storytellers and historians alike. Ivar the Boneless, son of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. Beneath his wolfskin cloak lay a body frail and twisted, his legs as unyielding as stone, cursed by a fate that would crush weaker men. Still, the northern winds seemed to whisper his destiny into the crests of the icy waves. For what Ivar lacked in physical prowess, he made up for with a mind as sharp and unforgiving as a Norse winter. But Ivar's story was no mere tale of gods and curses. It was a saga about conquering limitations, tearing through the fabric of history, and leaving behind a legacy as unbreakable as the legends told in his name. Ivar's birth came cloaked in prophecy. Aslaug, his mother, a woman descended from seers, dreamed of calamity should she and Ragnar conceive a son during a night of her forewarning. Yet Ragnar, valiant and unrelenting, brushed aside such omens, chasing passion unbridled by caution. When Ivar was born, his bones were absent, soft as river reeds. The midwives recoiled, whispering that the child should be left to the mercy of frost and wolves. But Aslaug saw something more, a fire flickering in the fragility, "This boy will reshape the world," she declared, cradling him against a storm of judgment. "He will not conquer with his hands or feet, but with the storms raging in his mind." From the earliest days, Ivar showed an intellect that defied his broken body. His brothers, Bjorn Ironside, Hvitserk, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, and Ubbe, excelled at feats of strength, yet Ivar bested them in the games of wit and strategy. One wintry evening, as Ragnar observed his son's games, he questioned Ivar's contribution to their legacy. Without hesitation, the boy devised a game of foxes and hares, mapping moves so intricate and layered that Ragnar himself admitted, "The boy's mind is a sword that even Odin would envy." The legend of Ivar the Boneless truly begins with an oath forged in venom and grief. When Ragnar Lothbrok met his death in a pit of vipers at the hands of King Aella of Northumbria, the world seemed to howl with fury. It was Ivar who stoked the embers of that rage into full-blown flame. While his brothers howled for retribution, it was Ivar who chose patience, the cunning of a serpent coiled and waiting. He rallied the forces of the Norse under the banner of vengeance, leading the great heathen army, an unparalleled force both in scale and purpose. His strategies defied conventions. "War is not measured by spilled blood," he lectured his brothers. "Victory lies where your enemy's mind collapses before your sword ever strikes." When the army marched into Northumbria, Aella was certain of his triumph. Ivar played him like a harp, retreating when Aella felt bold, advancing when terror overtook the battlefield. The eventual capture of the hapless king led to a grim spectacle, a statement of Norse dominance. The Blood Eagle, a harrowing ritual of slow death, unfolded under Ivar's gaze, each rib split like wings unfurled from Aella's back. As the northern lights danced over the grisly scene, Ivar murmured, "Let this be a feast for ravens and a warning for kings." With Aella's fall, Ivar's march of vengeance came to an end, but his ambition only grew. Unlike his brothers who sought glory in distant battles and bountiful raids, Ivar desired dominion, a kingdom of not just warriors but order. He claimed York as his seat of power, ruling with an iron hand and a silver tongue. The kingdom became an intricate puzzle under Ivar's care, with Anglo-Saxon lords bowing to his whims in awe and trepidation. While stories of his cruelty multiplied, his enemies flayed, their skins stitched into flags, other tales spoke of his gift for governance. Through diplomacy as sharp as his tactics in war, Ivar stabilized York. He ordered fair laws, ensured trade flourished, and awarded loyalty with calculated generosity. And yet, even as his plans expanded, the shadow of his frailty grew longer. His legs, that unyielding curse from birth, weakened further with time. Among those who served and resisted him, whispers persisted. Was Ivar a monster or a savior? Perhaps he was both, an embodiment of the Norse belief that within chaos lies the chance for creation. As years weighed heavy, the tapestry of Ivar's life began fraying. His brothers drifted apart, their valiant paths splintering across seas and continents. Only the ever-loyal Hvitserk remained by Ivar's side, though the bond was strained. "The gods speak to me," Ivar confided in Hvitserk on a moonless night, his voice trembling yet resolute. "They say I will outlast my enemies. But I see the truth. My body fails me. My spirit will shatter long before my bones do." In the winter of 873 AD, Ivar launched a final campaign into Ireland, targeting Dublin, a rich Norse settlement that defied his authority. It was here, on the Emerald Isle shores, that destiny caught up with the invincible mind trapped in a brittle body. Despite his tactical genius, time and illness had dulled the edge of Ivar's brilliance. The siege of Dublin was marked by miscalculation, his forces overextended and vulnerable. The defenders struck with ferocity, routing the Norse army into chaotic retreat. Hvitserk, pleading through anguish, urged Ivar to fall back. But Ivar, pale and gaunt, surged forward with the resolve of a Viking undeterred by death. "To retreat is to surrender," he rasped. "If they break me, let it be on the field where legends are forged." What followed is wrapped in myth. Some accounts claim Ivar died on the battlefield, his mangled body crushed under iron blades and the weight of destiny crashing down. Others recount a darker tale, that as his soldiers fled, he demanded they bury him alive, believing the earth, mother to all warriors, would cradle his legacy. Yet the truest story may rest in quiet tragedy. As the embers of battle dimmed, Ivar's spirit gave way to his failing body's demands. In the solitude of his tent, surrounded by the ashes of his ambitions, Ivar etched a familiar serpent into the wood of his chair. Perhaps it was a homage to Ragnar, the father who had doubted then revered him. Perhaps it was a symbol of his own cunning, a creature that binds history and chaos in equal measure. When the earth finally claimed Ivar the Boneless, it gained a figure as monumental as the mountains and as elusive as the mist rolling through fjords. His burial remains an enigma. Ancient accounts whisper of a tomb marked by luminescent stones, his bones said to have hardened to unbreakable iron. Whether feared as a spirit haunting the lands or revered as a leader who commanded impossible respect, Ivar's story shaped the Norse imagination, and ours. To the historians who pursue the fragments of Ivar's saga, he is a puzzle, both villain and visionary, a cripple and a conqueror, the cursed cursebreaker of his generation. To the poets and dreamers, he is an eternal figure whose fire defied the winds of fate. Ivar the Boneless was no ordinary man. He was a storm raging within a fragile frame, breaking the world and rebuilding it in his image. His life is a testament that greatness is not bound by the body, but flares from the mind and soul. It is, above all, a reminder to those who face their own storms. Even the most fragile among us can cast shadows that reach across the ages, defying the gods and the grave alike. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to explore this story with me. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any future videos where we dive into intriguing mysteries, untold histories, and the wonders of the unknown. The sea mist clung to the longship, blurring the line between sea and sky. Ulf Thorvaldsson, a seasoned Viking, traced the ancient runes on his axe, feeling a turmoil within that rivaled the stormy Nordic seas outside. Amid the murmurs of his raiding comrades, Ulf sensed a change within himself. Each expedition, once a quest for glory, now felt different, hollow and unsettling. His childhood memories were steeped in blood and conquest, watching his father return from raids, a symbol of Viking pride and valor. The tales of Valhalla and eternal battles were the lifeblood of their culture. Yet a seed of doubt had taken root in Ulf's heart, quietly questioning the endless cycle of violence. A pivotal moment came during a raid in England. Amidst chaos, an unyielding monk's compassionate gaze pierced Ulf's warrior heart, whispering of mercy and haunting his thoughts. "May God's mercy find you," the monk said, even as flames consumed the world around him. Those words lingered like a shadow over Ulf. The Viking settlement of Ravensholm was a world of warriors and tradition, where Ulf was molded into a fighter from birth. His father's grief over his mother's death fueled Ulf's rigorous training. "A warrior feels no pain," Gunnar insisted, pushing Ulf through relentless drills, teaching him duty and honor above all. But Ulf was different. He questioned the endless raids, the consuming violence, seeking answers that made elders uneasy. Bjorn, Ulf's closest friend, saw life simply: fight, conquer, survive. To him, the gods demanded blood and true Vikings delivered. "You think too much," Bjorn teased, valuing a sharp axe over a sharp mind. But Ulf's inner battle raged on. In moments of quiet, Ulf recalled the monk's words. The compassion in those eyes challenged everything he knew about strength and survival. Their next expedition targeted a wealthy settlement in Ireland, promising wealth with minimal resistance. As their ship cut through the mist, Ulf's unease grew. The night before the raid, Ulf dreamed vividly. He stood before two figures, Odin, the god of war, and the crucified Christ, each symbolizing divergent paths. "Choose," they commanded, shaking the foundations of Ulf's beliefs, challenging his understanding of strength and existence. Odin embodied the warrior's might and wisdom, while Christ represented vulnerability and compassion, a new kind of strength. Awakening, Ulf felt a profound change approaching, a seismic shift in his soul. The settlement awaited, peaceful and unaware. As Vikings prepared for battle, Ulf felt detached, the sounds of war distant. The raid began in brutal fashion, but Ulf moved mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Then he saw her, a young woman with an infant, defiant hope in her eyes, a cross behind her. Time slowed. Ulf's axe felt heavy, the monk's words and his dreams seeping into his heart. "No," Ulf whispered, lowering his weapon to protect rather than destroy. Bjorn, shocked by Ulf's defiance, demanded an explanation, but Ulf was resolute, standing between the woman and his own people. News of Ulf's mercy spread, transforming confusion into anger among his fellow Vikings. Returning to their ship, Bjorn confronted Ulf, accusing him of betrayal and dishonor. The village elders, led by Gunnar, deemed Ulf a coward, stripping him of his heritage and casting him out. Ulf's transformation cost him everything: family, community, identity. Yet something unbreakable remained within him. Exiled, Ulf navigated a world between two cultures, avoided by Christians and hunted by Vikings. Surviving through odd jobs and his Viking skills, Ulf encountered a wandering priest named Father Thomas. Unlike other missionaries, Thomas listened without judgment, offering understanding over conversion. Through conversations with Thomas, Ulf began grasping the Christian faith's radical essence: strength through love and mercy. Years passed, and Ulf shed his Viking past, becoming a protector of the vulnerable, bridging two worlds. His reputation evolved. Feared as a Viking, respected as a defender, his actions spoke of redemption beyond his past. As the years went by, Ulf embraced both his Norse roots and newfound compassion, embodying a new kind of warrior. On quiet evenings, Ulf reflected on his journey, seeing the gods of his youth as part of a larger divine understanding. The hammer of Thor and the cross of Christ, once opposing symbols, now represented protection against darkness. Watching the setting sun, Ulf felt peace, knowing his journey was ongoing but finally on the right path. In the distance, a ship sailed, carrying warriors like he once was. Ulf smiled, knowing each soul finds its own redemption. Years later, as an old man, Ulf would return one last time to the shores of his homeland, his weathered hands holding both a Thor's hammer and a wooden cross. The Viking settlements had changed, touched by new beliefs and shifting winds of time, much like he himself had transformed. His son, born of both Viking blood and Christian compassion, stood beside him, listening to the final wisdom of a man who had walked between two worlds. And as the sun set over the Nordic waters, Ulf knew that true strength was not in conquest, but in understanding, a lesson harder won than any battle he had ever fought. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to explore this story with me. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any future videos where we dive into intriguing mysteries, untold histories, and the wonders of the unknown. To understand Viking sacrificial practices, we must first explore their cosmology. The Norse universe was divided into 9 worlds, linked by the world tree Yggdrasil. The gods lived in Asgard, while humans resided in Midgard, with other realms like Jotunheim and Alfheim. The Norse pantheon was complex, with gods overseeing various life aspects. Odin was the chief god, associated with wisdom, war, and death. Thor was the god of thunder and protection, while Freyja was known for love, fertility, and battle. Each deity's domain influenced the sacrifices offered. Blot was the term for sacrificial rituals, central to Norse religious life. These ceremonies occurred regularly through the year and on special occasions, deeply embedding sacrifice in the Viking culture. Major blots were aligned with the agricultural calendar. The midwinter blot celebrated the winter solstice, while the spring blot sought victory and success. Midsummer and autumn blots marked harvest periods, involving animal and occasional human sacrifices. In times of crisis, human sacrifices were made to appease the gods. The Ynglinga saga tells of King Domaldi's sacrifice after Oxen, and men failed to end a famine, highlighting the lengths Vikings would go. Some scholars suggest ritual regicide occurred in Norse societies, supported by archaeological evidence and medieval accounts. This practice might reflect a tradition of sacrificing kings for prosperity. Human sacrifices sometimes accompanied high-status funerals. Ibn Fadlan's account of a Rus Viking funeral describes a slave girl sacrificed to join her deceased master, illustrating ritualistic death. Sacrifices for victory involved offerings to Odin, ensuring success or giving thanks post-battle. Thietmar of Merseburg describes 99 men sacrificed at leisure, reflecting the scale of such rituals. Religious festivals could include human sacrifices. Adam of Bremen recounted sacrifices at Uppsala's temple, where humans were offered every 9 years alongside animals. Hanging was associated with Odin, reflecting his mythic self-sacrifice. Some bog bodies show evidence of hanging, offering a glimpse into Viking sacrificial methods. Stabbing or bleeding involved collecting the victim's blood in sacred vessels, a ritual highlighted in the Eyrbyggja saga, where blood was used to anoint statues and participants. Drowning as a sacrificial method saw victims submerged in bodies of water. Bog bodies in Denmark show signs of such practices, offering archaeological insight into Viking rituals. Strangulation akin to hanging left victims without suspension. Bog bodies show strangulation signs, aligning with sacrificial customs in Scandinavian history. Beheading was sometimes employed in Viking sacrifices, with some burial sites revealing separated skulls, suggesting ritualistic decapitation. Blows to the head were another method, with several bog bodies showing fatal head trauma, hinting at sacrificial customs. Tollundman, though pre-Viking, offers insight into bog sacrifices. Found in Denmark, his well-preserved body and hanging death shed light on ancient rituals. Lindoman, discovered in England, exemplifies complex sacrificial practices. Multiple injuries suggest a ritualistic triple death, reflecting devotion to multiple gods. The Oseberg ship burial in Norway presents indirect evidence of human sacrifice. 2 women, one possibly a sacrificed servant, were buried with extensive grave goods. The Trelleborg mass grave in Denmark contains about 157 individuals, with many showing violent deaths, sparking debate on whether this signifies sacrifice or conflict casualties. Ibn Fadlan's account of a Rus Viking funeral provides a vivid depiction of human sacrifice, emphasizing ritual acts, intoxicating drinks, and the angel of death guiding the ceremony. Adam of Bremen's account details sacrifices at Uppsala, where human and animal bodies were hung in a sacred grove. His description emphasizes the ritual's scale and periodic nature. Thietmar of Merseburg describes sacrifices at leisure, highlighting the regularity and quantity of offerings, including humans and animals, to appease the gods. While historical accounts suggest large-scale human sacrifices, archaeological evidence indicates they were rare. Some scholars argue they became less common as the Viking Age progressed. Debate exists on voluntary versus involuntary sacrifices. Accounts like Ibn Fadlan's suggest voluntary participation, but many victims were likely slaves or prisoners. There's ongoing discussion on whether some evidence represents religious sacrifice or ritualized execution, blurring lines between criminal punishment and sacrificial rites. Sacrificial practices likely varied regionally, with some areas embracing customs that were rare or absent elsewhere, reflecting diverse cultural landscapes. Human sacrifice likely declined over time due to changing social structures or Christian influence. Scholars debate the evolution of these practices during the Viking Age. Sacrificial rituals could foster community cohesion, binding participants through shared, intense experiences, reinforcing social ties and collective identity. Leaders conducting sacrifices wielded significant power, with the ability to perform such rituals reinforcing their authority within the community. In crises, human sacrifice might have offered a sense of control, providing action against uncontrollable events like famine or war, reflecting deep psychological needs. These sacrifices reveal complex attitudes towards death, showcasing how Vikings intertwined mortal life with divine realms, shaping their understanding of mortality and the afterlife. Christianization gradually replaced pagan practices, with Christian leaders actively working to suppress human sacrifice as they spread their faith throughout Scandinavia. As Viking society evolved, increased urbanization and centralized power structures may have reduced the contexts supporting human sacrifices, shifting societal norms. Interaction with Christian cultures and other societies likely pressured Vikings to abandon practices seen as barbaric by outsiders, aligning with broader cultural shifts. Economic changes, such as expanding trade networks, may have encouraged adopting customs in line with trading partners, influencing the decline of human sacrifice. Understanding Viking sacrificial practices requires analyzing archaeological evidence, historical accounts, and the cultural context, acknowledging the complexity of these rituals. Research continues to evolve our understanding of Viking sacrifices, providing insights into their worldview and social dynamics, despite their shocking nature by modern standards. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to explore this fascinating story with me. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any future videos where we dive even deeper into intriguing mysteries, untold histories, and the wonders of the unknown.
The Saga of Ragnar's Sons, a tale of vengeance, conquest, and legacy. The call to vengeance. In the frigid lands of the north, where fjords cut deep into the earth and the aurora danced in the night sky, 5 brothers gathered in a smoky longhouse. They were the sons of Ragnar Lodbrok, a legendary Viking king whose name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. But now Ragnar was dead, slain by King Ivar of Northumbria in England, thrown into a pit of snakes in a cruel execution. The brothers, Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, Vitsirk, and Ub, sat around the crackling fire, their faces etched with grief and determination. Ivar spoke first, his voice low and intense. "Brothers," he said, leaning forward on his crutches, for Ivar's legs were weak, "our father's blood cries out for vengeance. We must answer that call." Bjorn, broad-shouldered and battle-scarred, nodded solemnly. "Aye, but we must do more than simply kill Ivar. We should conquer his lands, and more besides. Let us carve out a kingdom that would make our father proud." Sigurd, named for the strange mark around his eye that resembled a snake, added, "We have the men, we have the ships. All of Scandinavia watches to see what the sons of Ragnar will do." Vitsirk, always quick to anger, slammed his fist on the table. "Then let us waste no more time. We should sail for Northumbria now." Up, often the voice of reason among his brothers, raised a hand. "Patience, brother. We must plan carefully. Our actions now will shape the fate of our people for generations to come." As the night wore on, the brothers debated and planned. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the fjord, they had made their decision. They would raise the largest army the North had ever seen, and they would sail for England. But their ambitions would not stop there. They would conquer, explore, and leave their mark on the world in a way that even their father had not. For months, the sons of Ragnar prepared. They sent word to every corner of Scandinavia, calling for warriors to join their cause. They built longships, gathered supplies, and forged weapons. As word spread of their plans, men flocked to their banner, eager to win glory and riches. In the year 865, the Great Heathen Army, as it would come to be known, set sail for England. Hundreds of dragon-proud ships filled the horizon, their sails billowing in the wind. At the head of this mighty force were the sons of Ragnar, each commanding their contingent. Ivar, despite his physical limitations, was the chief strategist. His keen mind had devised their plan of attack. They would land in East Anglia, using it as a base to launch their assault on Northumbria. The army landed on the shores of East Anglia, and the locals were overwhelmed by the sheer size of the Viking force. The East Anglian king, Edmund, tried to resist but was quickly defeated. Rather than waste their strength conquering East Anglia entirely, Ivar negotiated a truce. In exchange for peace, Edmund would provide the Vikings with horses and supplies for their campaign against Northumbria. With their army now mobile, the sons of Ragnar turned their sights northward. They marched towards York, the capital of Northumbria, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Villages were burned, monasteries plundered, and any who resisted were put to the sword. The fall of Ivar. As news of the approaching army reached York, King Ivar knew he faced a grave threat. He hastily gathered his forces and marched out to meet the Vikings in battle. The two armies clashed on a cold, misty morning outside the city walls. The battle was fierce, but the Northumbrians were no match for the battle-hardened Vikings. Ivar's strategies, combined with the berserker fury of Bjorn and Hvitserk, quickly turned the tide. Ivar's army broke and fled, and the king himself was captured. Now, at last, the sons of Ragnar had their father's killer in their grasp. They debated what to do with him, but in the end, it was Ivar who decided Ivar's fate. In a gruesome ritual known as the Blood Eagle, Ivar's ribs were severed from his spine and his lungs pulled out through the wounds to form the shape of eagle's wings. As Ivar's agonized screams echoed across the battlefield, the sons of Ragnar felt a grim satisfaction. Their father was avenged, but their conquest had only just begun. With Northumbria under their control, the brothers faced a decision. Should they press on and try to conquer all of England, or should they pursue other goals? After much debate, they decided to split their forces. Ivar, and Hvitserk would remain in England, consolidating their hold on Northumbria and expanding their territory. Bjorn and Sigurd, however, had grander ambitions. They would take a portion of the fleet and sail south, seeking adventure and riches in distant lands. Ivar, now established as the ruler of Northumbria, began to show his skills as a leader. He was ruthless when needed, but also shrewd. He understood that he couldn't rule through force alone. He made alliances with some of the local nobles, allowing them to keep some of their lands and power in exchange for loyalty and tribute. Under Ivar's rule, York became a thriving Viking city. He encouraged trade, built defenses, and even allowed some degree of religious freedom, though the Christian churches were heavily taxed. Bjorn and Sigurd's Mediterranean adventure. While Ivar was building his kingdom in England, Bjorn and Sigurd embarked on one of the most audacious Viking expeditions ever undertaken. With a fleet of longships, they sailed down the coast of Francia, modern-day France, raiding as they went. They passed through the Strait of Gibraltar and entered the Mediterranean, a sea no Viking had sailed before. They raided the coasts of Spain and Italy, even attacking cities as far south as Pisa. Legend has it that they mistook the city of Luna in Italy for Rome itself. Bjorn is said to have tricked his way into the city by pretending to be a dying man who wanted a Christian burial. Once inside, he sprang from his coffin and opened the gates for his men. Whether this tale is true or not, Bjorn and Sigurd's Mediterranean expedition brought them immense wealth and fame. They returned to Scandinavia as legendary figures, their ships laden with treasure. The consolidation of power. Back in England, Ivar, and Hvitserk continued their conquest. They pushed into Mercia and East Anglia, overthrowing kings and establishing Viking rule. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, divided and weakened, could offer little resistance. However, in Wessex, they met a formidable opponent. King Ethelred and his younger brother Alfred, later known as Alfred the Great, managed to halt the Viking advance. In 871, a series of battles were fought with mixed results. It was during this campaign that Ivar's health began to fail him. The exact nature of his condition is unknown. Some say he suffered from brittle bone disease, which would explain his nickname the Boneless. Others suggest he may have been a skilled contortionist. Whatever the truth, Ivar's physical limitations finally caught up with him. Knowing his end was near, Ivar called his brothers to him. He instructed them to bury him at the border of their conquered lands, saying that as long as his bones guarded the frontier, no one would successfully invade. Then, in 873, Ivar the Boneless, the conqueror of Northumbria and avenging son of Ragnar, breathed his last. The brothers' diverging paths. With Ivar gone, the remaining brothers found themselves pulled in different directions. Ub took control of their holdings in England, trying to maintain what they had conquered. Hvitserk, restless and eager for more battle, decided to seek his fortunes elsewhere. Hvitserk sailed east, to the lands that would one day become Russia. He fought alongside other Viking leaders, including Oleg of Novgorod, helping to establish the Kievan Rus state. His skill in battle made him famous, but his fondness for drink often led him into trouble. Meanwhile, Bjorn returned to Sweden, where he became a king in his own right. He ruled justly and was known for his wisdom as much as his warrior skills. Under his reign, trade flourished, and he maintained peace with neighboring kingdoms, through strategic alliances and marriages. Sigurd Snake in the Eye returned to Denmark, where he also became a king. He had to fight hard to maintain his rule, facing challenges from other Viking leaders who sought to take his throne. The mark around his eye, which had given him his nickname, was said to glow before battle, striking fear into his enemies. The last battles. As the years passed, the sons of Ragnar faced new challenges. In England, a resurgent Wessex under King Alfred began to push back against Viking rule. Ub found himself fighting a defensive war, struggling to hold onto the lands his brothers had conquered. In 878, Ub led a Viking army to Devon, hoping to defeat the forces of Wessex there. But he had underestimated his opponents. In a fierce battle at Cunwit, Ub's army was defeated, and he was killed. The famous raven banner, said to have been woven by Ragnar's wives and carrying magical properties, was captured by the Saxons. Hvitserk's end came in the eastern lands. According to some accounts, he was captured by a tribe called the Eastling, and burned alive as punishment for his raids. Other stories say he eventually returned to Scandinavia and died in battle there. Sigurd's rule in Denmark came to an end when he was killed in a battle against invading forces from the south. Some say he died fighting against Christian missionaries who were trying to convert his people. Of all the brothers, only Bjorn lived to old age. He died peacefully in Sweden, leaving behind a stable kingdom and many children to carry on his legacy. The legacy of Ragnar's sons. Though all of Ragnar's sons eventually fell, their impact on history was immense. They had changed the map of England, establishing the area known as the Danelaw, where Viking law and customs held sway. This Viking influence would persist for generations, shaping the English language, law, and culture. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. That will help me a lot, thank you. Strange Steiner.
The Saga of Bjorn Bloodax. In the days when the gods still walked among men, when the frozen fjords echoed with the clash of steel and the roar of dragon-prowed longships, there lived a warrior named Bjorn Bloodax. His name was whispered in fear around hearthfires, for he was the mightiest of the berserkers, those fell warriors who fought with the strength of bears and the fury of wolves. Bjorn was born on a night when the aurora danced like green fire across the sky, and the Norns themselves were said to have attended his naming. From childhood, he showed signs of the battle madness, his eyes gleaming with an inner fire that both awed and terrified those around him. As he grew to manhood, Bjorn's fame spread throughout the Northlands. His axe, a fearsome weapon forged by dwarven smiths and quenched in dragon's blood, never failed to find its mark. In battle, he would cast aside his armor, his skin turning hard as iron, impervious to blade or arrow. He fought with the strength of 10 men, his battle cry freezing the blood of his enemies. But with great power came a terrible price. Each time Bjorn surrendered to the battle madness, a piece of his humanity slipped away. The quiet moments between raids became torture, his mind plagued by the faces of those he had slain, their screams echoing in his dreams. He found solace only in the company of his fellow berserkers, men who understood the burden of their gift. It was on a raid to the eastern lands that Bjorn's life changed forever. As their longship rounded a misty headland, they came upon a settlement unlike any they had seen before. The buildings were of strange, smooth stone, and in the center stood a tower that seemed to touch the very clouds. The Jarl, Hakon One-Eye, ordered the attack. But as the berserkers leaped from their ship, howling their war cries, they were met not with fear, but with eerie silence. The streets were empty. No children ran screaming. No women hurried to hide their valuables. It was as if the entire settlement had simply vanished. Bjorn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold wind blowing off the sea. His battle madness, always simmering beneath the surface, refused to rise. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. "Something is wrong here," he growled to Hakon. "We should leave this place." But the Jarl, his eye gleaming with greed at the prospect of untold riches, would not be deterred. "Are you a man or a cowering thrall?" he sneered. "We came for plunder, and plunder we shall have." Reluctantly, Bjorn followed his lord into the silent city. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud on the stone streets. As they approached the central tower, Bjorn's unease grew. The very air seemed to thicken, pressing against them like an invisible hand. At the base of the tower, they found a door of black metal, covered in strange runes that seemed to writhe and shift as Bjorn looked at them. Hakon reached out to touch the door, and as his fingers brushed the surface, it swung open with a sound like a dying man's last breath. Inside, they found riches beyond imagining. Gold and silver coins spilled from open chests, precious gems glittered in the torchlight, and weapons of exquisite craftsmanship lined the walls. The berserkers fell upon the treasure with whoops of joy, stuffing their pockets and bags. But Bjorn held back. His eyes were drawn to a small alcove at the far end of the chamber. There, on a pedestal of obsidian, sat a helm unlike any he had ever seen. It was forged of some dark metal that seemed to drink in the light, adorned with twisting horns and a face guard shaped like a snarling beast. As if in a trance, Bjorn approached the helm. The voices of his comrades faded away, replaced by a low, thrumming whisper that seemed to come from the helm itself. It promised power beyond his wildest dreams, the strength to conquer not just lands, but entire realms. With trembling hands, Bjorn lifted the helm. It was surprisingly light, and as he placed it on his head, he felt a surge of energy course through his body. The battle madness rose within him, stronger than ever before, threatening to consume him entirely. But with it came knowledge. Bjorn saw visions of ancient battles, of warriors long dead who had worn this very helm. He saw the true nature of the berserker's rage, not a gift from the gods, but a curse born of dark magic and terrible sacrifice. With a roar of anguish, Bjorn tore the helm from his head. "We must leave this place," he shouted to his companions. "This treasure is cursed." But it was too late. As Bjorn's words echoed through the chamber, the air itself seemed to come alive. Ghostly figures materialized around them, warriors from every age and land, their eyes burning with an unnatural hunger. The berserkers fought with all their legendary fury, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the spectral attackers. One by one they fell, their life force drained away by cold, incorporeal hands. Bjorn alone stood his ground, the cursed helm clutched in his hands. He could feel its power calling to him, promising the strength to defeat even these unearthly foes. For a moment, he was tempted to put it on, to surrender to its dark magic. But the faces of his fallen comrades flashed before his eyes. With a mighty effort of will, he raised the helm high and brought it smashing down upon the stone floor. The metal shattered like glass, and a terrible scream filled the air. The ghostly warriors vanished like mist in the morning sun. The tower began to tremble, stones falling from the ceiling. Bjorn ran, dodging falling debris, the bodies of his comrades left behind in the collapsing ruin. He emerged into the pale light of dawn, gasping for breath. Behind him, the tower crumbled into dust, taking with it all trace of the cursed treasure. Bjorn fell to his knees, overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion. For 3 days and nights, he sat upon the shore, neither eating nor sleeping. He contemplated the nature of the berserker's rage, the price of power, and the weight of the lives he had taken. When he finally rose, his eyes held a new wisdom, and his heart a new purpose. Bjorn Bloodax returned to his homeland, but not as a berserker. He laid down his axe and took up the role of a skald, a storyteller. He traveled from village to village, sharing the tale of the cursed helm and the true nature of the battle madness. Many laughed at his warnings, calling him a coward who had lost his taste for battle. But some listened, and in time, the number of those who sought the berserker's path began to dwindle. Years passed and Bjorn grew old. His once mighty frame became bent, his fiery hair turned white as snow, but his eyes never lost their intensity, and his voice never wavered as he told his tale. On the last night of his life, as he sat by the fire in a mead hall far from his birthplace, a young warrior approached him. The youth's eyes burned with a familiar fire, and Bjorn felt a chill of recognition. "Old man," the warrior said, "I have heard your tale 100 times. You speak of the dangers of the battle madness, but I see only glory. Tell me truly, do you regret the power you once wielded?" Bjorn looked into the young man's eyes, seeing his own youth reflected there. For a moment he remembered the thrill of battle, the intoxicating rush of the berserker's rage. But then he remembered the faces of those he had slain, the comrades he had lost, and the terrible truth he had learned in that cursed tower. With a sad smile he replied, "The only power worth having, young one, is the power to choose who you will be. I chose to be a teller of tales, rather than a taker of lives, and in that choice, I found a glory far greater than any battle could provide." The young warrior opened his mouth to argue, but at that moment a strange look came over Bjorn's face. His eyes widened, focusing on something only he could see. A smile of profound peace settled on his weathered features, and with a soft sigh, Bjorn Bloodax, once the mightiest of berserkers, closed his eyes for the final time. The mead hall fell silent, warriors and skalds alike bowing their heads in respect. But the young warrior who had spoken to Bjorn felt a change come over him. The fire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a thoughtful look. He picked up Bjorn's drinking horn and raised it high. "To Bjorn Bloodax," he called out, his voice ringing through the hall. "Not the greatest warrior, but the wisest of men. May his story be told as long as there are ears to hear it." As the warriors drank to Bjorn's memory, a cold wind blew through the hall, extinguishing the fires. In the sudden darkness, many could have sworn they heard the clash of spectral arms and the howl of wolf-helmed warriors. But when the torches were relit, there was no sign of anything amiss, save for a single white feather that floated down to rest on Bjorn's still form. And so ends the saga of Bjorn Bloodax, who learned that the greatest battles are not fought with axe and shield, but within the heart of every warrior. His tale would be told for generations, a warning and a beacon to those who sought to walk the path of the berserker. For in the end, it is not the fury of our battles that defines us, but the wisdom we gain from them. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts on the events covered in this video, please share them in the comments below. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss any video. Check out my next video, where I'll dive deeper into one of these topics.
Vikings of Iceland. The Viking Age in Iceland began with the island's first permanent Norse settler, Ingolfur Arnason, who arrived around 874 AD. According to the medieval Landnámabók manuscript, Ingolfur was a Norwegian Viking from the fjords of western Norway. He had earlier been outlawed from his homeland and set off across the North Atlantic in search of new lands. When Ingolfur's crew first spotted the uninhabited island they called Snaeland or Snowland, he had his high seat pillars from his former chieftain's dwelling thrown overboard. Ingolfur vowed to settle wherever the pillars came ashore. They eventually landed in what is now the Reykjavik area, where he established his homestead estate called Reykjavik. This became one of the first permanent Norse settlements on the island. Over the next few decades, word spread of this new unsettled island to the west. Waves of settlers followed in Ingolfur's footsteps, sailing from mainland Scandinavia to escape overcrowding, conflict, and a lack of viable farmland. Most settlers were Norwegian Vikings, but many also came from other areas of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the British Isles, and even Norse settlements in Ireland. According to the Book of Settlements, around 400 separate settler ships arrived on Iceland's shores between 874 to 930 AD during this period of the land taking. Each summer, dozens more Viking longships appeared on the horizon carrying families with their possessions, livestock, and enslaved servants. These early settlers claimed huge swaths of the pristine Icelandic landscape as their own, carefully choosing areas near fertile grasslands for livestock and sheltered bays for harbors. They settled all along the island's hospitable coastal areas, establishing a territory that spanned over 800 miles from east to west. Living on this remote island in the North Atlantic was challenging. The winters were brutally cold, the weather unpredictable, and the landscape dominated by rugged mountains, glacier, black volcanic deserts, and rocky lava fields. But the early Vikings were a resilient, resourceful people well equipped to tame this new island home. Using the abundant driftwood that washed ashore, early turf and stone longhouses were constructed by the settlers. These sturdy dwellings were partially dug into the earth and had sod-covered roofs. This ancient architectural design helped insulate the home against the harsh Icelandic winds and cold. Essential items like clothing, storage containers, rope, and ship's riggings were made by hand from materials like wool, animal fur, and skins. Metals were extremely scarce, usually reworked from abandoned scrap and heirloom items settlers brought with them. The few crops able to grow in Iceland's volcanic soil and subpolar climate included grains like barley, rye, oats, and flax. These provided the settlers with their meager harvests of bread, porridge, and textiles each year. More significant food stores came from plentiful animals like cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, horses, seals, fish, whales, walruses, and seabirds. With no trees growing taller than shrubs on the island, peat gained incredible importance as the primary fuel source for heating and cooking fires. Large communal peat-cutting grounds were carefully managed and their harvests stockpiled for winter. While isolated, the Vikings of Iceland did not live in complete seclusion. Merchant ships made periodic trade voyages to Iceland loaded with valuable iron, luxuries like colored cloth, glass beads, wines, and continental goods. The Icelanders exported their surplus butchered foods, wool, furs, seal skins, and other raw materials back to Europe. This trade also allowed news, fashions, and cultural influences to spread to and from the island. As the population grew rapidly in the following centuries, Icelandic society evolved into a loose confederation of chieftaincies ruled democratically through an annual legislative parliament called the Althing. First established around 930 AD, this General Assembly of Freemen was held each summer near the present-day site of Ingvellir National Park. Here at these grounds along the tectonic rift valley, all laws and legal disputes involving violence, property, and inheritance cases were decided by majority consensus within the framework of long-standing Norse laws and customs. This decentralized political system was remarkable for its time, lacking any formalized central authority, monarchy, or permanent military. The harsh realities of daily survival and farming during Icelandic winters forged a self-reliant, egalitarian society. Yet despite this rural isolation, a remarkably rich culture and literary tradition arose among the Vikings of Iceland during the medieval period. Between 1000 to 1300 AD, as Christianity spread across the island, generations of anonymous Icelandic poets, historians, and scribes composed dozens of epic tales known as the Icelandic sagas. These compelling prose narratives provided a vivid account of family histories, dramatic conflicts, Viking expeditions, and heroic legends from both the pagan and Christian periods. Some of the most famous Icelandic sagas that originated from this golden age of literature include Njál's Saga, Gréta's Saga, Egil's Saga, Laxdæla's Saga, and Eric the Red Saga. While semi-fictionalized, these eloquent accounts offer invaluable insights into the Viking mindset, laws, daily life, morality, and ancestral heritage. During this same era, the compilation of two important manuscripts called the Poetic, or Younger, Edda and the Prose, or Elder, Edda helped preserve ancient Norse mythology, legends, poetry, and cultural traditions in writing. The unknown authors drew from oral histories passed down over generations. The Poetic Edda collected epic poems like Völuspá and mythological stories like the legend of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. The Prose Edda, attributed to famed Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century, systematically recorded and interpreted the tales of Odin, Thor, and the other pagan gods and heroes that the Vikings revered. Other prolific medieval writers from Viking Iceland left behind invaluable historical narratives like the Book of Settlements, Land Namabok, the Book of Icelanders, Islandingabok, and the Saga of the Greenlanders, Grönlendinga Saga, which chronicled the Norse exploration and attempted colonization of Greenland and Vinland in North America around the year 1000 AD. This exploratory saga began with Eric the Red establishing the first European settlement allowed in Greenland after being exiled from Iceland for manslaughter. His son Leif Ericson then led an expedition team that is believed to have reached the coast of present-day Newfoundland, establishing a short-lived Norse outpost called Vinland. While the Vinland settlement was ultimately abandoned after a few years, this represented the first confirmed European presence in continental North America, nearly 5 centuries before the voyages of Christopher Columbus. As the power dynamics shifted across medieval Scandinavia in favor of centralized monarchies, the fiercely independent Viking settlers of Iceland adapted their cultural identity and transitioned to a more peaceful, agrarian existence over the centuries. Aspects of their Viking ancestors' pagan beliefs, folklore, and oral storytelling traditions blended together with European influences to create a unique Icelandic heritage. Eventually, this society embraced Christianity in the year 1000 at the Althing Assembly, following intense debate between the pagan believers and newly converted Christians. The linguistic isolation of Iceland also led to the remarkable preservation of the Old Norse language through to the modern era. While the languages of mainland Scandinavia continued evolving over time, Icelandic retained more ancient vocabulary and grammatical elements unchanged for centuries after the Viking Age ended. Even today, native Icelandic speakers can still read many of the original sagas aloud in the same language used by their ancestors over 1,000 years ago. In the modern day, Iceland remains the only nation where a North Germanic language derived directly from Old Norse is the primary mother tongue. Many archaeological sites across the island provide enduring physical evidence of the Viking footprint in Iceland. Excavated ruins reveal the foundations of longhouses, fragmented tools, cookware, weapons, jewelry, wood carvings, and pagan Norse religious artifacts like miniature deity figures. The farmsteads at places like Stong in southern Iceland and Jorsadala Valley have uncovered entire preserved longhouses with intact walls, fireplaces, bedrooms, livestock pens, and byres dating back over a millennium. At Stong, researchers discovered the ancient remnants of a longhouse that was 83 meters, 272 feet, in length, a true chieftain's dwelling.